Welcome to the Rebekah Panepinto Project. Today, I am very excited to host Christopher Bishop. He is a TEDx speaker, an ex-IBMer, a former touring rock musician, a deep tech MC, a future workplace consultant, and a firm believer in the power of innovative technologies to drive exciting careers. Based on his own non-linear multi-model path, Chris has had nearly 8 careers so far. And through this, he created a workshop called How to Succeed at Jobs That Don't Exist Yet. He conducts these sessions in both corporate and university settings. Now, his current tech passion centers around the transformative power of quantum information science. He has performed the role of MC as well as led panels for numerous different Inside Quantum Technology conferences from New York all the way to APAC to spread the message. Chris also hosts the Quantum Tech Pod series where he interviews C-suite executives at leading quantum companies. We have an amazing conversation about this today, and I'm really excited for you to be exposed to all that's coming with quantum computing technologies. Enjoy the show. Christopher, welcome to the show today.
Well, thank you. I'm delighted to be here, Rebekah.
Likewise, I've been so looking forward to this because you have just such an interesting and intriguing career path that really inspires me with all the different areas that I'm involved in, that you here being ahead of me in your career, like put all this together to make this really, really cool experience and personality that is Christopher Bishop and what you're doing today. So I'm excited to dive into that today.
Well, thanks. Certainly, it's been interesting so far, my nonlinear multimodal career path. I hope your viewers find it interesting.
Well, the interesting part of it all when it comes to the tech piece and working for IBM, you were telling me it started by meeting a woman on the train. Can you take us back to that story and experience?
Well, so let me give you some sort of backstory just for context, right? So I have a degree in German literature from a small liberal arts college in Vermont. I studied bass there. I played in the Berkshire Symphony. I was in a local orchestra. I studied bass with Jimmy Garrison, John Coltrane's bass player, who did an artist in residence term there. And then after I graduated, I got a gig touring with a band in the 70s called McKendree Spring. Your parents might have heard of this band. I did 3 albums with them. We toured opening for the Eagles, for ZZ Top, for Fleetwood Mac, Weather Report. It was amazing time. Then I moved to New York, became a studio musician, did 2 tours and a live album in London with Robert Palmer, the English pop singer. Played with Chuck Berry at the Meadowlands, Bo Diddley at Danceteria, a bunch of other settings. And I got into the jingle biz, started writing music for television in order to sleep in my own bed and get off the road. And the front end of the synclavier, which was the instrument I was using, a digital musical instrument at the time, was a Mac. So in about 1985, music became data, and you had to learn how to use a computer to compose or do something else for a living. So I bought a Mac Plus, sort of the segue to IBM, and learned how to sample and sequence and compose and stripe a track on an 8-track with SMPTE timecodes so it chase locked the picture so you could lay in the sound effects at the right time and that kind of thing. And then became intrigued, having used a computer, with this wacky thing called the World Wide Web, kind of in the early 90s, and taught myself to be a web producer, and then hung out a shingle. And it was lean for about a year, but I got hired by a couple of seminal interactive agencies in New York to work as a web producer. And then, to your earlier point, commuting into New York on a Sunday from Connecticut on Metro North, I sat next to a woman who worked at IBM. We commiserated on the fact that we were both going to work in New York on a Sunday. And we exchanged emails and, hit it off, had a nice conversation. And about 6 months later, she sent me an email saying, my group is expanding at IBM. Would you ever think of working at Big Blue? I said, I don't think so. What would I do at IBM? I mean, really? She said, well, just go meet with my VP and see, you'll have a nice conversation. So I went in and was hired on the spot into corporate internet programs. So that's how I got into IBM.
Yeah. Hired on the spot. No resume, no experience really, but the music parlayed to some of it. At least you knew the web.
Yeah, so the segue, she needed people who knew how to produce websites. And in 1998, there weren't a lot of people who knew how to produce websites. So I was in this kind of, with all due respect, an elite group, if you will. But the more importantly, I gave her my resume and had sort of 20 years of music on it. And with several years working at an agency and producing websites. But she said, the same qualities that made you successful as a freelance bass player in Manhattan will make you successful at IBM. I was like, really? She said, yeah, you're going to have to be a creative problem solver. You're going to have to be resourceful and resilient. You're going to have to be comfortable with ambiguity. You're going to have to be able to work across disciplines. You're going to have to be aware of your role as a global citizen. I mean, IBM is in 190 countries, cranking 24/7. She said, so can you start next week? I was like, what? And I ended up working there for 15 years in a bunch of different roles, strategy roles and exec comms roles, and a couple stints in corporate headquarters. It was fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's quite the impressive resume builder, especially as you were coming along with what was advancing with technology during that time period. And now here we are years later, and it just continues to move faster than most of us are, I think, even ready to receive. But you're focused primarily in the quantum space now, and all that's going there, which is a newer technology for me. It's kind of the next phase of where things are going from cloud and the generative AI where I focused. What are you
Yeah.
excited about with quantum and how you're engaged in it today?
Well, so uh, I work as a master of ceremonies, and I liken it to my role as a bass player, right? So I'm sort of connecting the dots, which from a musical perspective, you're connecting the rhythmic and harmonic data when you're a bass player. You're making sure the bass drum and the guitar player's chords are in the same place. And as a bass player, you have the ability to play the note that indicates what the chord is and also emphasize where the bass drum is, right? So I've been working for about 3 years in an MC role and a moderator role. This past year, I've been in Singapore and London and Paris. I'm going to Dubai in February. So it's pretty exciting. The thing about quantum, though, that really intrigues me is what's called quantum supremacy. So this is a good cocktail party snippet for all of you listeners. Google has a quantum computer using superconducting qubits, and they solved a problem, admittedly sort of a toy problem, but it was a problem on their computer in, this was like 3 years ago, in 200 seconds that they contend would have taken a classical computer 10,000 years to solve. So let's think about that for a minute, right? So any setting where you're going to capture and rationalize large amounts of data is going to be transformed, which is basically every business, every setting, right? So it's a remarkable potential technology. They say some people say it's the most powerful technology humans have ever created, right? Where it's being applied today is in settings like drug discovery, drug development. So there's a woman, Shahar Kainan. She runs a company called Polaris QB. They're doing analysis of drugs to deal with diseases. She can look at like 5 billion potential molecules for a drug development setting in like 10 minutes. I mean, you just can't do that on a classical computer. They're using it in financial services settings to do portfolio optimization, do Monte Carlo simulations, fraud detection, that kind of thing. So lots of really interesting ways it's being applied today, and the potential is kind of unlimited.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it become more and more mainstream. But what is it that's making it only be eased into industries? Is it a financial constraint that, folks like pharma and finance, they have more resources to invest in this? Or is it that just people aren't ready for it?
Well, it's very complex technology, right? It's based on quantum mechanics, quantum physics, which even baffled Einstein, right? He described entanglement, which is what two quantum particles do. You move one and the other one moves in exactly the same way. He described it as spooky action at a distance. And a little historical perspective, he and Niels Bohr, one of the sort of founders of quantum mechanics, quantum physics, went head to head and argued and did not see eye to eye about this whole concept. So it's very complex physics. Um, and ultimately, there are going to be use cases that will drive adoption. So financial services, which is where there's a lot of money, is certainly looking at it as an early adopter. I remember a famous quote by this gentleman named Will Zeng. He was the head of quantum research at Goldman Sachs. He's now been poached and he's at Quantination, which is a Swiss-based VC firm investing in quantum. But his opening line at a quantum conference a couple of years ago was, "Hi, I'm Will Zeng. I work at Goldman Sachs. I have a checkbook. Bring me something." Like, what do you got? Is there some solution I can use to impact value for my clients or that we can use internally to improve productivity and efficiency. And banks are starting to use early adopters. There are a couple companies that are focused on vertical specific applications in financial services. So it's exciting.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Blank checks are a good place to be.
Well, it's like, we're Goldman. We have the money. What do you got? Let me see it.
That's very cool. Leading the industry towards a new path of innovation.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Now,
It's
you
fun.
have this whole workshop that you've put together too throughout your career because you've had such interesting different facets to what you've done. And it's called How to Succeed at Jobs That Don't Exist Yet, which I think when it comes to quantum, that's probably the case of a lot of those jobs. They just flat out don't exist yet. What is some of the findings that you came across as you were putting this together, and the advice that you share to folks as they're looking to prepare for jobs that don't exist yet?
Yeah. Well, so again, it's based on how I navigated these 8 or 9 careers so far, right? I sort of reflected on it and tried to codify the process and look for similarities. Like, what did I do every time to kind of move from being in the jingle biz to working at IBM, right? Um, there's several aphora or data points that I cite to kind of set up the conversation. The first is a report by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics a few years ago now, but it said today's learners are going to have 8 to 10 jobs by the time they're 38. So that's a public sector finding. That's a report. The thing that strikes me about it, again, as a former IBMer, is there's no agenda. It's like, just here's the data. Here's what we found. Do with it what you will. They're not trying to sell anything. They're not trying to book engagements. It's like, this is the research we did, and here's what we found. The other 3 points I always like to make are uh, research would indicate that 85% of the jobs people are going to be doing in the next, say, 10 years haven't been invented yet. They're going to use technology that doesn't exist that makes things like this look antiquated. I always say to students, get ready for an out of the mouths of babes comment from your grandchildren saying, Grandpa, you had to carry something around in your pocket to talk to grandma and send her pictures? That must have been so inconvenient. Oh my goodness. And we're going to use this technology to solve problems we don't yet know are problems. So what that translates to is lots of new careers, lots of new jobs, lots of new skills. So the other point is they're going to be transferable skills. Again, this is me looking back at what I knew how to do and what I didn't know how to do. Skills that are transferable that you can move into a new job. And then there's going to be a delta. There's going to be a gap. Like, what do you need to learn how to do? So, for example, moving from the jingle biz to the web biz, I know how to run a team and deal with a client and a budget and a deliverable. In this case, it was a 30-second spot. And the players or actors were like a singer and a guitar player and a copyist and a recording engineer. So once I learned the skills associated with producing a website, we have a copywriter and a coder and a graphic designer. I transferred those skills with running a team at a meta level into being in the jingle bit. I'm in the web biz. So again, that's sort of a model for, how people can move into new jobs. The other thing is that interesting jobs that haven't been invented yet, traditionally, historically, typically occur at the intersection of disciplines that haven't been connected before. Right. So an example is nanopharmacy. That's an example I cite. So the 3 chemists who won the Nobel Prize a few years ago won it for creating nano machines that operate at 10 to the minus 9, like smaller than a human hair, right? So to be a nanopharmacist, you have to have an understanding of mechanical engineering at the nanoscale, but also how to deliver pharmacology at the molecular or maybe even atomic level, getting it right to a wound or a tumor or whatever. So that's, again, skills that exist and skills you're going to have to acquire. But that's an example of like a new field. And there are a couple of doctors at UC Berkeley that have something called neural dust, which is a medical device the size of a grain of rice that they insert under the skin, subcutaneous, and it can deliver ultrasound, say to stimulate a tumor or whatever, and it can also capture data and send it back to their readers, if you will.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty sci-fi, but happening today.
Yeah. Oh, I was in the line at Whole Foods this weekend, and it's new pay with your palm technology that I set up there. And just like crazy. As I'm walking away, the cashier's like, now you don't need to bring anything. I'm like, that's crazy. Like, now what are banks going to do to get you on their credit card? Like, they now have lost that. You don't need the card. So now it's got to be more incentives, and they've got to find different ways to get to you. And then you're just going to flash your palm and pay for whatever.
Yeah. Well,
Crazy.
it's a new challenge. I mean, the historical model, the pattern matching we could cite is that banks were all in an uproar when ATMs first appeared because they were like, oh my goodness, we're going to put tellers out of work. I mean, these people that hand out money in the bank are going to be, there's no job for them. But what turned out what happened was tellers had to get sort of retrained to deliver more value, to be more focused on customer service, to do more thoughtful kind of strategic conversations than just handing out bills and coins to clients. So, and I think we'll see the same kind of thing. I mean, I love paying with my phone, for example. I mean, I can get on the subway in New York with my phone. I travel all over Europe using my phone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's cool.
Oh yeah, it's made it so easy to spend money, unfortunately, but
Yeah,
also to interface with the world around you, and like can't use the excuse like I lost my wallet or left my wallet at home. It's like your palm. It's the craziest
yeah,
thing. Will open doors and
yeah,
opportunities for you.
yeah,
I'm really excited when it comes to airports. I think it's hit some, but when it's more mainstream airports to be able to use your palm for things like, oh
yeah.
man, that will
So I
be
just wanted to
amazing.
follow up and say that I do these workshops at universities called, as you said, How to Succeed at Jobs That Don't Exist Yet. And I've done them at Columbia, at NYU Stern, at Georgetown, Texas A&M, Duke, and I'm always looking for opportunities to do them. So if your listeners have a setting where that kind of workshop might be valuable, please reach for me on LinkedIn or reach for
Mm-hmm.
Rebekah, reach for you and get my email.
Mm-hmm. Check out your TEDx as well.
Check out my TEDx. I have,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I just put together a new website actually, improvisingcareers.com. It
Amazing.
just went live like last week. So
Okay.
yeah, has pictures of me in various workshops, in various quantum settings, as well as gigs. I still play in a couple of
Mhm.
different bands. I play in a Louisiana R&B band called Otis and the Hurricanes, and then in a hardcore Cajun dance band called River City Slim and the Zydeco Hogs,
Wow, that's a name.
where the lead instrument are these handmade wooden button accordions. And it's like heavy-handed dance music, like hardcore, driving. It's fun.
That's very fun. How do
Yeah.
you balance all of this, your travel schedule and all the different areas that you are successful in? Is it a matter of prioritization and like thinking 12 months in advance, or how do you react to all these inquiries that come your way?
Well, it's managing my schedule for sure. I mean, the music stuff tends to be weekends, so that's usually easy. Although when I'm traveling, I have a guy who covers for me in both those bands. A couple of different, there's a bench, if you will. The other travel, I just kind of manage it. I mean, I've done podcasts in offices and in hotel rooms, and I did an event for The Economist in my hotel room in California, moderating a panel on in the metaverse, and so it gets challenging, but thank goodness for technology like this, we can have
Mhm.
a conversation and be in two different places. So
Love
it's
it. Yeah,
good.
let's talk about your podcast, the Quantum Tech Pod. It's, I'm sure, how you've been able to grow a lot of your personal brand and open these opportunities. But where's your focus with that right now?
So I work for or sponsored by an organization called Inside Quantum Technology. They were the first people to sort of hire me to be an MC, and they sponsored the podcast. I just published my 62nd episode last week, which was a conversation with a woman named Christine Gilkes. She has a PhD in, I think, artificial intelligence from Oxford. She works at Ernst and Young. She's an EY consultant, right? She heads their sort of global quantum practice, if you will. But I've been lucky in that I've had conversations with mostly C-suite execs. They've agreed to talk to me, and my main focus is people with a P&L, right? Profit and loss, people that are running a business at the top of a function that, are interested in, generating attributable revenue from this technology. So I've talked to a few scientists um, and a few consultants as well, but mostly it's like execs, men and women that run these companies. And it's fascinating. They all come from lots of different backgrounds, some from academia, some from big tech, jobs like at Intel or wherever. Some come from startups. They were interested in putting together some kind of quantum model, business model, and have jumped in. Some were management consultants, some were investment bankers. So it's a really interesting conversation. It's on Apple Music and on Spotify. A little plug for the if you're interested in quantum, I would encourage you
Mhm.
to check it out.
I was going to ask in these situations, like how many of these companies are, you know, pre-revenue versus post-revenue. It sounds like some of them actually been around a while and been in the
Yeah,
space. They're just so niche that you don't run across them on your day to day.
yeah. I mean, I'd say that, again, this company ID Quantique that I did the most recent session with, they've been around a long time and they have contracts with big partners. I mean, they just signed a deal to build a quantum network in Singapore, working with Singtel, which is the local sort of telco down there. But they've been around a long time doing interesting work. Others, IBM is obviously big in the space. They had a IBM Quantum Summit last week. So they introduced a new device called System 2. It's a modular quantum computer with three of their, what they call Heron chips that have a large number of qubits. Um, there's a company called Quantinuum that is generating revenue, and that it's a consortium kind of Honeywell Quantum Systems and Cambridge Quantum, which is a software company. So they're sort of the Apple of quantum. They have hardware, software, and services. Um, and again, they have their client relationships from Honeywell, right? This storied, manufacturing-based company that deals in aerospace, and I mean they do everything from like satellites to HVACs and fire alarms, right? So they have these trusted relationships with clients, and then Cambridge Quantum is a company started in England by a gentleman Ilyas Khan, and they've been developing quantum software for several years. So, and they merged to form Quantinuum a couple of years ago. Pretty interesting company. But then there's a lot of startups that are just surviving, I think, on grants. To be honest, it's not really POs; it's grant applications that keep the lights on and the heat going.
Mm.
It's a wide range.
Out of a lot of these startups you've talked to, or even established companies in quantum, what is like the main use case that just like blew your mind and got you totally bought into where this is going? Was it with what Google is doing, or maybe some other more niche space that you're like, okay, wow, yeah, I want to be all about that?
Well, I think certainly the quantum supremacy example, right, which in theory touches everything. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you can manipulate data at that rate and pace, I mean, it impacts everything. That said, a more recent use case that is really quite exciting is from a company called Circumagnetics. They're a spin-off from the University of Nottingham in England, and they've put together a quantum-based sensor, which is like 50 times more sensitive than any standard sort of MRI kind of device. And they're using it. They built a 3D printable wearable headset, and they're focused on detecting childhood epilepsy with this device. So, and they just won a 10,000 pound grant because they're in England from Institute of Physics, that a company called Quantum Exponential, they're a VC firm, quantum VC firm, awarded them, and they're using it to expand this technology and get like FDA approval. And the theory is that they could use this kind of technology to detect maybe Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or other diseases. It's pretty remarkable. So it's happening today. It's like a real world use of quantum. So quantum is sort of four categories too. Let me digress, but just give you viewers a sense of it. So quantum computing is kind of the belle of the ball, it gets all the media spotlight, all the press, right? Because the potential for quantum supremacy is pretty remarkable. But quantum clocks and sensors, the sensor example I just cited is going on today. Quantum in atomic clocks, those have been around for 50 or more years. That's a quantum application. Then there's quantum networks. There's several companies and organizations looking to use quantum to develop secure, immutable networks for sharing data, right? So the model in quantum physics is if you look at or interrupt a transfer, it decoheres and the data goes away. So basically, it's in theory unhackable. And then quantum cryptography, post quantum cryptography. So the theory is again that at some point we'll reach Y2Q, which is a takeoff on Y2K, right? So when quantum computers can crack what's called Shor's algorithm and break RSS and ECC encryption, um, there's going to be a lot of data that's at risk. There's The thread is described as harvest now, decrypt later. So there are lots of companies that are putting together solutions to protect company data, including protocols to identify, where is your mission critical information and what current cryptography solutions do you have and how do you capture it, identify and protect it? Because in theory, there are hackers, non-state actors, competitive countries looking to steal military secrets or medical information or social security numbers, whatever, and use it for ransomware attacks or, you know, Russia selling US data to China. So that's a pretty interesting space as well.
Now, you travel over the world too, talking about this. Do you feel that here in the US, when it comes to quantum, we have an advantage, or there's some other niches and countries, maybe in Europe or the UK, that might be a step or two ahead of us?
Well, I think the U.S. has the advantage just because there's so many um, leading sort of technical universities and sort of a history of innovation. I mean, Silicon Valley, right? So, I mean, there's been technical innovation coming out of there for like 80 years or something, right? The sort of elephant in the room is China. We don't have a lot of crisp data. It's a bit of a black box. They're ostensibly allocating like $15 billion to develop quantum technologies over the next 10 years. It's not easy to sort of validate that spend or that focus, but they publish papers occasionally around how they're using quantum technologies to deliver remarkable results. But I'd say sort of definable or verifiable, the U.S. is in the lead, and I would say UK is probably number two, and then big focus in Europe in general, Germany, Italy, France. I was at an event in London in September, and there was a gentleman delivering the UK's national quantum strategy. He was followed by a gentleman from Paris delivering the French national quantum strategy. And other speakers referencing focus in Germany and Italy and Spain. So yeah, there's a lot going on.
When it comes to an enterprise adopting quantum too, what are some of the risks or hesitations that you're seeing a lot of these groups have to overcome to get their technology to be adopted?
Well, I think you have to be careful that it's not a solution looking for a problem, right? I think you have to. My general advice would be to any enterprise looking to investigate quantum is put together like a skunk works, like a team, like find the people that are interested in it and that know about it and give them a budget and staff maybe and a couple of years of air cover from a P&L maybe and set up an organization and begin investigating how it might solve business specific problems in your organization, because it will be able to. Depends on what your portfolio is, what your go to market is. But that would be sort of my general advice. There's a great example. There's a woman who spoke at the Economist event in London last spring. They do an event called Commercializing Quantum. I participated in a couple of them. I'm going to London in June to do their next one. But this woman works at a bank, Investec, I think, and she has a PhD in astrophysics. And so when they got ready to put together a quantum team, they looked up her resume or whatever in her database in the company files and said, "Hey, Ria has a PhD in astrophysics. Let's get her to run the quantum practice." So they sort of buttonholed her. "Hey, want to come set up this team?" And she's like, "Okay, sure, I'll," because she was sort of that far, down the line, if you will, had a sense of how it works. And so she's running this like quantum practice at an investment bank in Europe now. So that's sort of
Incredible.
the advice. Yeah.
Has she been on your show yet?
She hasn't, but I'd like to talk to her for sure.
Yeah, sounds like a prime guest right there.
Yeah, it's a great story though.
Hmm. Very cool. Yeah, you have some interesting people in your life and experiences. And again, it comes back to this career that has been super intriguing and inspirational to me as well.
Well, thank you.
Mm. Now, I have one final question for you, and it's around principles. I'm curious, what is the guiding principle you've lived by to be successful in business?
Well, I would say I have this continuing and unabated sense of curiosity. That's kind of a main driver for me. And I would encourage again listeners to to focus on that. And it's sort of a muscle that you can flex and develop, but for me it's sort of a natural instinct. I'm always wondering what's around the corner, what people might do with, in this case, emerging technologies, or how might it address problems that we haven't been able to address to date, or how might it do good for humankind, if you will. So I would say be curious. That would be my general advice, my general guidance. That's sort of what's kept me, viable and interested and successful in all these different careers. And get ready for downturns. I mean, there are going to be settings where people are not going to understand what you're doing or what you're interested in, or again, where technologies are nascent or opportunities are rare. I mean, when I first got into the web biz, I used to tell when I used to do on-demand business talks to clients for IBM, I would say, yeah, I've been involved in the web since back when it was hip. I mean, in the early 90s, nobody knew what it was or how it was going to be applied, or what are we going to do any business with this thing, or now it's on your wrist, and we can't live without it. So my other sort of general advice is, in terms of careers and jobs, go where they don't know what it is yet. And the royal they being existing business models, right? Go where they're doing something new, and then you can contribute, you can be creative, you can get remunerated, do something innovative, and then do it again, do the next thing. So that would be my general advice.
Amazing. Yeah. And you've been a great example of all of that. So, Christopher, thanks for coming on the show, sharing your experience with us. So excited to share all the links to your new website and your podcast and all the amazing things you're doing so we can keep tabs on you. So,
Well,
keep at
thank
it.
you. Thanks, Rebekah. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and your audience.